This video will show you how to add an assignment in Moodle 3.2 with the Boost theme. So once you have turned editing on, which as a reminder, that is up here under the gear, and you would click and say turn editing on. I've already got it on, so that's why it says off. And then you would come down to whichever week you want to add your assignment. So let's say I'm going to add one here to week 3. And I'm going to click where it says add an activity or resource. So click on that. And then I get a selection of what I can add. So for example, if I want to add an assignment is usually something you want them to either type in a text box an answer to a question or a reflection or something like that, or you want to actually have them turn in such like a paper or a journal or something of that nature. So if I want to create an assignment, I'm just going to click there, and then I'm going to click the word add. And then Moodle is going to bring me into a page where I can give my assignment information. So I would name my assignment, and we suggest you number your assignments so that your students know which order kind of to work through them. So let's say this is the first one of the week. I know there's other ones already out there, but I'm going to say this is 3.1, week 3, first assignment. And I'm just going to call this test assignment. And I would also want to put a due date for my students. So I might just say due Friday. That way at a glance, they know exactly when this assignment is due, and they get a little bit of an idea of what it's about. All right, then I would type in the description, and the description is where I'm going to put my instructions. So I would type in whatever I need to. So I'm just going to say this is a test assignment. And then I might put in the points. It's worth 50 points. And then if I had a rubric, I could link to that. And if I want to link to something like a rubric, that functions similar to other programs you may have used, I just highlight the word that I want to link and then click up here on Insert Link. And then I would paste my URL in there. Target, I usually leave it as the default. That's mainly for accessibility reasons, so that screen readers can follow what's going on. And then I would click the word insert, and that would link it to my rubric. All right, I don't really advise clicking display description on course page. Otherwise, this whole thing will show on your front page, and that can end up with a lot of scrolling for your students. If you have a file, maybe it's some additional information, or maybe it's a template that you want them to follow, you could click there to add it. The availability, it's kind of up to you if you want to mark this or not. One caution about setting due dates in Moodle is that if you do that, then the next time you teach the course, so if you make a copy of this and teach it again, you'll have to be sure you always go in and change those dates, which is fine if that's how you choose to do it. So you can allow submissions from, and then a due date, and then a cutoff date. So whichever you want. I usually don't set due dates because I don't like to go in and do that every time I teach the course. But again, that's a preference. You can do whatever you would like there. All right, the next is the submission type. So this is where you're telling your students, or you're telling Moodle what you want to accept from your students. So you can do a file submission. You can set a maximum number of files, and you can set what their upload limit is. I usually leave that as the default. And then you can also type in accepted file types if there's certain types. So let's say you just want it to be in a Word doc, then you could type that in there. And if you click on the help, it will give you an idea of how that needs to be formatted. All right, I might also, instead of having a file submission, I might just want them to type a response. Maybe I have a question I want them to answer, but I don't really want to have them do a formal, written in a Word doc kind of submission. So if that's the case, I would just uncheck file submissions and check online text. And if I do this, it's just going to bring a box up for my students to type some information in. I can set a word limit, so I can enable that, and maybe I don't want it to be over 250 words, so I can type that in, and it will block them from, making maybe more lengthy response than I want to see. All right, then feedback types is the next option, and you can do however you want to give feedback. So if you leave the comments box marked, there'll be a box for you to type comments in. If you want to give files back to them, you can leave files marked. If you don't, like if I'm doing an online text, I'm probably not going to have a file, so I'll probably uncheck that in that case. You can also do an offline grading worksheet if you have a rubric that's not embedded in Moodle that you want to upload. You can mark that. Comment inline allows you to comment on their submission. So I usually leave that yes, because I'll show you that in the grading video. Submission settings, I usually leave these as the default. So I require students to click the submit button. You can if you want. Sometimes that's a good extra step so that they know they've submitted it, but it's up to you. Require that they accept a submission statement. I usually leave that no, but you can definitely mark that if you want them to say, yes, I'm submitting this. Attempts reopened, I leave that manual, and maximum attempts, kind of depends on what you're doing. On an assignment, I usually leave that as unlimited in case they submit something and then they need to resubmit it. Otherwise, you'll have to come and change that. All right, group submission settings. So if you have groups, these are some fields you'll need to mark for groups. Notifications. I usually leave these as the default too. You can mark them, and I believe you'll get an email when somebody submits something, but that can kind of clog your email up as well. And then the grade, this is where you'll tell Moodle what type of grading scheme you're going to use. So there's a couple of types: scale or point or none. I usually leave that as points. If you do the scale, then you've got to select what kind of scale you want to use. Your maximum grade, that is how many points it's worth. So let's say this one, I think I only put 50 points on it, so I'm going to do 50. How you want to grade it, so you can do the simple direct method, which is just putting the grade in once you look at it. You can do a checklist, a marking guide, or a rubric, and there'll be some other videos that show you how to set those up. The grade category, this is how it will show in your gradebook. So especially if you do have categories in your gradebook, it's very important to put the assignment in the right category. So mine's on week 3, so I'm going to put it as week 3. You can set a grade to pass if you want. I don't usually do that. I usually leave blind marking and marking workflow and marking allocation. I leave those as the default. Then you have your common module settings. This is where you can show or hide it. There's also, once you're in the course, you can do it there. But there's also some group information there if you are going to use groups. Restrict access, I don't usually do that, but you can set restrictions as to when the students can access this. So if you need to do that, you can just click add restriction. It'll walk you through. You can tag your assignment if you want to, kind of put it in a searchable function for your students. And then we don't really do competencies in our courses yet. That might be something we think about later on, but so I just leave those as the default as well. So then you have two options. You can save and return to course, which just dumps you back into your course and you can see where it lands, or you can do save and display, where you can look at what you've typed. I usually do save and display just so I can see what it looks like, make sure it looks the way I want it to look. And there's my assignment. So it tells them when it's due. This is a test assignment, 50 points. And there's a link to my rubric if I have one. And then I get a grading summary. So how many people I have in the course, how many have submitted, and how many needs grading. All right, if I want to go back and look at this in my course, I'm just going to click on the week there in the breadcrumbs, and I can come to my week, and there it is. And if I want to move it to a different spot, I simply just drag this arrow, and maybe I want to move it to the top, and there it is. Hope this video has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, please let me know.